all of a sudden, the other Rob and I have this little tangent of skate conversation, right?
Yep.
And my brother's looking at us like the confused puppy, like, what the fuck are you cunts talking about? You know? And it's like, it can't be that different.
Yeah.
It can't be that different, you know?
But it was. You might have to preface this too by saying we've had a power out, we had a couple of beers, and fucking, yeah.
Well, we are live, and and now I'm putting the old.
You might have to preface this too by saying
It's close to. Yeah.
We're up and going.
We are up and going.
awesome. Hello, everybody.
Welcome everybody to Their Side Live. We're here at Goliath. We've got Penguin with us, and we have Shane George all the way from Katherine.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very
Good to
much.
be here.
Bit of a clap there. I've got there's an audience.
Absolutely. Awesome.
We had some claps. Cool, awesome. So let's get straight into it, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about your first memory of skating, and let's go from there.
Oh, first memories of skating would have been 6, 7 little old banana boards. Skating in the driveway in my parents' place in Dandenong. That's probably the earliest memories I have of skateboarding. Always had one for many years, like through all of that. But
So what year?
oh, we're talking, so I was 67, so we're talking, 75,
Yep.
74, 75.
Yep.
Probably my earliest memories of skateboarding. Typical thing, tic-tacs, slalom, 360s, all that sort of stuff.
Through the school bags?
Exactly right. So, yeah.
Board, what kind of board was it?
Oh, now. The first ones I think were the plastic ones that had all the ribbing on the bottom of them. Big, the old wheels with the big coning in them. They were quite wide and all the rest of it. And the boards were very flexy.
The old Condor, maybe.
Yeah, like the Condors, exactly right. And then I think a couple of years after that was when they started to bring in those composite boards, more the fiberglassy sort of flexy
Stiffer.
ones. Yeah, they still had a bit of give in them, but they were a bit stiffer. That'd be probably my earliest memories of skateboarding. I always remember having one, but probably between 7 and 15, 14 or 15, I think it was just it was that sporadic sort of, on and off the board sort of thing. Like BMXs were involved at that time, and so you'd ride BMXs, but then when you're at home, you'd ride your skateboard. And it wasn't until I was probably around about 15, I think, where it resurfaced for me with the wider boards that were happening, etc., and started to get more into it. And by 16, I was at Paran Bowl and skating. I remember because I went to Melbourne High School, and it would have been at probably about 16 or 17 at Melbourne High School. We managed to convince the school staff to allow us to have skateboarding as part of the sport curriculum.
That's awesome.
So then Wednesday afternoons, because we were in South Yarra at Melbourne High, Wednesday afternoons we'd finish school at 1:30 and we'd go down to the skate park with one of the teachers, and there was only half a dozen of us in the school, and we'd go down there and they'd allow us to skate for the afternoon until 3:30, then you could go home. And of course we never did, we always stayed there till 6:30 or so, and that was when I first started getting into trouble with my parents for not coming home from school on time.
So you got into it when you were about, what, 13, 12?
No, well...
at 75, how old?
70, I was only, 7 years old.
Yeah, 7 years old, yeah.
Around that age.
Yeah,
So I remember vividly, one of my most vivid memories of those times is Skateboarder magazine and getting the American skateboard magazines. And I remember I used to just pore over them, and you'd read them, you'd read that same magazine every day for weeks and weeks, and I remember I used to send off to get stickers from the skate mobs in America.
No way.
I've still got vivid memories too of cutting the pictures out of the magazine and putting them up around my bed.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the plexiglass the plexiglass ramps that they had that guys were just starting to ride
No
at that
way.
stage,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah, yeah.
And it's still something that sticks in my memory very strongly. And I think it's interesting that while I remember that at 7 or 8 years of age, it took until I was sort of 14, 15, 16 to where what they were doing started to have more of an impact on that's something I really want to do.
Yeah.
You got to remember too, in the 70s and the early 70s, a lot of the skating at that stage was like early Stacey stuff, where it was all slalom. It was a flat land. You know, if you got a bank, you were lucky. You know, and you'd carve the bank and da. But there wasn't, you know, grinds and
Yeah. Coming out.
Yeah.
Like 1 foot.
Yeah.
You know, toes on the nose.
You know,
and-
like sort of stuff. Where
Oh,
you
yeah.
go one leg, hold both ends of the board and roll
Bunny
along
hop.
with one. Yeah, and bunny hop them, and even gorilla grip. You know, the old holding both ends of the board with your feet,
Oh, yeah.
curling your toes over the end of them so you could jump the board. You know, like that's my earliest memories of skateboarding.
Yeah. When did it start getting serious for you?
16-ish, I think, 15 to 16. As I said, I'd sort of started skating a bit more around 15, and then with the impetus of that, like I was getting right into it, and then managed to sort of sort that stuff out with Melbourne High to start skating at the Thingo for our Wednesday afternoon sports. And then started to meet more skaters and more skate-oriented people, and that was when I started to meet people like Brendan Walker and Simon, you know, Sack, and guys that were sort of coming down to Paran to skate. This is long before, you know, remember, this is before there was a ramp there and all the rest of it. It was just a bowl and there was dirt around the outside.
Pond.
So where the bowl finished, it was a pond, yeah, and where the bowl finished, there was dirt, you know, like,
Right.
so it wasn't until probably into the mid-80s where we actually got it tar put around the outside edge, so then you could do fly-outs and stuff like that. But it was,
No way.
yeah, the first, like, Paran Bowl was my real home turf, even though I lived in Brighton. Because of my proximity to the school, you know, I used to take my board to school, and then when I'd finish school, I'd go to Paran and started to meet all the skate punks and all the crew that were a lot more hard edge on skating at that stage, that had been obviously involved with it a lot heavier, you know, because people like Simon and Brenny and those boys, you know, we're talking Bloodbath and the Noble Park skate scene, and started to meet them, and instead of just being this impressionable surfy skate sort of kid, started to develop my attitude and my, you know, my real feel for skateboarding. Luckily enough, and so now we're talking sort of into, you know, we're talking into the early 80s. And that was when I started getting invited to go and skate Melton.
Oh, okay.
Or, you know, somebody would talk about Ringwood or Bulleen, or,
There you go.
you know, like I've got a couple of photos of me at Bulleen doing big airs over the hip, and I'm wearing like torn jeans with a studded belt and no t-shirt and no helmet, no pads, no nothing like that, on a Danforth board.
Yeah.
You know, like started to drift around then, because I was at that age where I could sort of go to my parents, oh, I'm going so-and-so, they're driving us out there, and da-da-da-da. So, yeah, but I think things got sort of serious around that 16 or 17-year-old for me, which is a bit later than what a lot of other guys, you know, sort of sort of got serious about skateboarding.
And what was the scene? What was your scene like? I mean, was it, you know, was it rough? Was it clean? Was it, you know, who were you?
I was, because I was a bit of a newbie to the scene and all the rest of it, you know, like, and obviously being at Melbourne High, you know, we had to have short hair and this, that and the other, and some of my fondest memories of that time are starting to learn about the differences in the world, like having your first toke on a joint and first sip of a beer, or I remember getting drunk on Southern Comfort, and even still to this day cannot smell Southern Comfort without going, oh my God, Father, I'm going to throw up. I got drunk under Malvern, I think it was under the Malvern Railway Bridge with a few crew, you know, like, so I'd started to sort of delve out and sort of, you know, like find the other side to clean life, you know, like the protected life that you have when you know, you grow up. So it wasn't until I was sort of probably around 17 or so that it got a lot more serious for me, and that skateboarding became life, and that I would skate from home to the train station to go to school, and then, you know, skate home,
yep.
or go to Paran and skate before I went home.
Yep.
Excuse me. It didn't take long for me to start hedging more towards, because I'd been listening to, I sort of like fell in with a few mods and Scooter Boys at Melbourne High, and started to get into music more and all of that. And then from that, by the time I was sort of 18, I was getting into harder music and, you know, wearing, you know, torn jeans and trying to be the punker. But I really I didn't really find that side of myself probably till about 18 or 19, where I started then being able to go, well, I can dress how I want, I can be who I want, and skating was just life. From 16 or 17, skating was everything.
So what music were you listening to that got harder and harder?
I've listened to everything. I've always been very broad in my music. Because of the sort of influence of the Mod Guys and the Scooter Boys, there was a lot of R&B, Clash, Jam were one of my favourite bands back in that day, and it was interesting because you listen to a lot of the lyrics of the inner city stuff from the Jam, etc., and it sort of related to where we were, and some Clash and all of that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also back in those days, Australia was a lot more white and British, and so those influences still had sort of relevance and reference to us.
Yeah.
But I think by the time I was about 18 or 19, I ended up, you know, like shaving my head and getting a mohawk started and but that was because I'd started to hook up with people like CP and Simon, and it was around that time, I think it was about 17 or so, that I convinced my parents to let me move into a flat in St Kilda, and I'm pretty sure it was with CP, my first flat that I moved into, but that was when then, because of being in St Kilda and sort of skating around St Kilda, etc., started to meet people like Borgie and the Badlanders. And it was just, they were in squats in St Kilda, and there was one particular place that they had, a squat that they had off Ackland Street. No, not Ackland Street. Anyway, one of the main streets near Ackland Street. And they'd sort of taken over this place that had an underground car park. So the driveway went down under the house. So they blocked that off right where the edge of the house was at the bottom of it, with like a 16-foot wide quarter pipe. And I remember like going there, and, you know, we're talking about guys that were a bit older than me and full punkers, and we're talking drugs and alcohol and, you know, girls with huge mohawks and tats, and it was just like, it was overwhelming. But I remember going there just to skate the ramp. Yeah. And because, you know, like, you were a skater, it transitioned so many boundaries. Like, if I had just turned up there without a skateboard, you would have been flogged or run out of the joint.
Right.
But because you were walking past and you saw this ramp and you saw this punker dude and they saw you walking with a skateboard, all of a sudden they were like, hey, what you doing, brother? You know, like, and so you didn't, and that's how I ended up meeting all the Badlanders and crew like that.
So you was that acceptance kind of thing that you had?
It's funny, once again, subculture-wise, skateboards was one of those things where 90% of the population you'd get flogged by, but there was 10% of the population that were skaters and that were on the hard crew, and the skateboard transitioned so much stuff for you, unless you were a dick. Like, if you were a dick, you'd get called out pretty soon.
Yeah.
But it's still strange to me when I look back on how I was prior to that time, that I fell in with crew like that and etc., because I hadn't been exposed to a lot of that hard life. Like, I had, you know, my parents are still together to this day. I had a relatively normal, solid upbringing, you know, Brighton High, Melbourne High, you know, but the whole time through that, I always knew that I wasn't normal.
Yeah.
You know, so it really ended up being one of those things where I was, I guess, from having such a sheltered life for so long, once you started to actually break out of those boundaries, then you realised everything was limitless.
So what was it about that, though?
I don't know. It's interesting, like, I don't know if it was that you were living on the hard edge and you were involved with people, because you've got to remember, like, you know, we're talking back when, you know, Borgie and all those guys were, you know, they didn't work, they were on the dole. You know, a lot of the punker skaters and all the rest of it, it was, you know, hardcore stuff. You know, we're talking about underground music scene, and maybe that's what makes people gravitate towards each other, is that we're all on the fringe and we're trying to survive on the fringe.
Yeah.
And the skateboarding was always one of those constant lines through, because really, I mean, if you looked at me back then and you looked at Borgie and the Badlanders and crew like that, you'd be sort of going, why the fuck would they accept a dweeb like that?
Yeah, right.
All I can attribute it to is the skateboarding.
Yeah.
You know, and it was about, because like I said, from about 16 or 17, the switch sort of flipped, and skateboarding was everything. Like, you'd go to sleep at night thinking about frontside grinds. You'd go to, you know, you'd wake up in the morning going, I don't want to go to school, I want to go and skate Paran.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like, so by the time I was 19 and I was leaving school, skateboarding was everything. And prior to that, I'd fallen in with, like, you know, Bogdan Kekic, Kolsky, Michael Janatowski, Kobe Holding, Scott Holding, and Gotzi. You know, Matthew Knightley, a whole heap of Elwood crew, and started to fall in with all of them. And so all of a sudden, skateboarding wasn't just something that was fringe. Skateboarding was something that was everyday and normal.
Yeah.
And so it just took over. You know, I've got a lot of fond memories of my little orange Dado, you know, loaded with guys, you know, heading out to Bulleen, heading out to Ringwood, Doveton, you know, like skating all of these insane places that were gnarly as fuck, you know, like, and I mean, if you could do frontside grinds in somewhere like Ringwood or Doveton, it was like, mate, you were just, you know, you were doing the shit.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like,
At the backyard.
mind you, in saying that, there was guys that when we'd go there, there were guys that were doing 2-3 foot airs out of Doveton Bowl.
Wow.
You know, and you're just doing, you know, like inverts and doing laybacks, and, you know, like, you'd just be looking at them going, fuck, how the fuck do you do that?
So this is all. You've met up with all these guys before the
through Paran,
but
but all
before
pre-vert days. Yeah, but it's interesting because Chris Payne and Sack and Darren Williams, Mad Willie as I knew him back in the day, and all of those crew were all skating Morty,
right,
and hitting places like that. So they'd come to Paran to have beer and carve sessions, and then we'd end up going down to, and I never ended up being much of a vert skater, you know, like, I can skate vert if it's like a mini ramp that goes to vert or whatever, but vert ramps I never really got into, but I used to go to all the sessions with all the boys, and, you know, I'd be there going, and taking photos of everyone. That was something we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of photos of me from back in the day of all the stuff that I used to do at Paran and on mini ramps and at Bulleen and this, that and the other, because I was the one taking photos of everybody back in those times.
Yeah.
I had this, because I'd done 2 years at Brighton Tech doing a photography class, and, you know, sort of did 2 years of photography school. This was back in the days of tech schools.
Yeah.
So my passion at that stage was not only skating but photography. So I used to go to Morty and Vermont and places like that purely to be on the ramp and take photos of the boys.
Right. So it wasn't...
I wouldn't skate them. If anything, I'd be doing, you know, if I was lucky enough to drop in, would be rare. It'd be more like running up the curve, getting on the board, you know, doing this, that and the other. If I could get a frontside grind out of chicken scratch, I'd be fucking happy.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like,
right.
For some reason, I never really pushed myself to that point of skating vert.
Yeah.
But probably, you know, and it was interesting because Bog edged on it here and there, and he ended up, you know, on Paran, you know, like he would do, you know, great lip tricks and all the rest of it, but he also wasn't much of a one to do big airs and this, that and the other. And so I was more of a street mini ramp bowl skater. And some of my best memories are of backyard pools. I only managed to hit 3 or 4 in those years, but, you know, like, that was the shit to me, was the old school side of things, was pool skating and bowls and mini ramps. So I was never much of a one for wheedle deedle, you know, kick flippy and tricky stuff. Yeah. You know, for me it was doing a grind over a death box, or, you know, doing a rock and roll in a corner of a pool that was just unrideable. You know, there was an old pool out at It's out in the western suburbs. Oh God, I've got photos of it on my How We Rolled site. I can't remember exactly what suburb it was in now, but it was one of those pools that, you know, like people flocked to, but not a lot of people could ride hard.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so and when you saw somebody doing frontside grinds right up on the lip of that thing, you know, over the tiles.
Yeah.
You know, that was like, fuck, man, that's hard.
Wow.
You know, like, so yeah.
So, so you were hanging out with Borgie?
Elwood Crew was my
Crew.
Elwood Crew was my crew.
Yeah.
But because of the way we skated and who we were, and we sort of dominated Paran. Paran was our local and all the rest of it, and we were all into rock and roll and hard music, and you know, we all wore sleeveless shirts and we're just starting to get tattoos. And
can I just interject? You were well known.
Well, I
was a suburb over working the Elsternwick Yogi store.
Yeah.
Your reputation preceded you boys. We
were pretty hard for the day. Yeah.
You set the tempo, and
we skated fast. We skated hard. We did a lot of big moves. You know, like I guess one of the moves that I'm most known for at Paran Bowl would probably be frontside boneless to tails. And it was on the small wall.
Yeah.
Which had the kick on it and just coming to sort of maybe edging towards vert. But, you know, there's a photo of me, you know, probably 5 foot out, changing hands, so frontside boneless, changing to there, and used to get my foot on and seriously do like a lean to tail from 5 foot out on Paran
That's
Bowl.
Awesome.
You know, like invert.
Yeah.
There's a photo of me, you know, which David Pang took. Of me doing an invert in Paran Bowl, and that was relatively unheard of back then, you know, like, but in saying that too, I think I was a bit more of a brutal skater where I made the board and the terrain do what I fucking wanted it to do.
Right.
You'd look at people like, Jesse and Bogdan and guys like that, and the flow and the smoothness that a lot of those, Kobe Holding, the flow that these guys, Samet boys, you know, like they had a lot more finesse and flow than what I did. I was a bit more of your, you know, like your Danforth, maybe not even Danforth, but I muscled my way into a lot of tricks, you know, like I made them fucking happen. In saying that, you know, I'm sure the boys will end up saying they've seen me take some spectacular slams. There's a couple I remember a couple vividly of hanging up on bone to tails there, and you know, there's no curve. It's straight to flat, you know. Like, but you'd if you didn't break a bone, you'd sit down up the back and have a beer, and you'd be sitting there going, "Oh no, I didn't make it." And the whole thing then was you never left a facility unless you made the trick you were trying to learn.
Right.
So you'd be lucky to walk, but you could roll in, and you'd have to just do it one more time until you could.
I know.
But see that it's funny too, because I reckon a lot of that actually came from people like Brendan Walker and Borgie, and I'm trying to think of a few of the names of the other boys, Obi, and a few of the other guys that were the real hardcore punker skaters, where, you know, they would have downed 5 or 6 beers and all the rest of it and skating like this. And they'd be taking slams and just getting back up laughing and all the rest of it. So that was the culture that we had, you know. The camaraderie too, like, you know, I've seen people dislocate elbows and stuff, and everybody was on the top of the bowl laughing their fucking head off. You know, and I think you laughed your head off because it wasn't you.
Yeah.
You know, we'd all rush to them and help them and stuff, but you were staunch. Like back then, you know, we were skating brutal places. You know, and if you messed up, you paid the price. So what do? Do you fold and not do it again?
Because were they cheese grater kind of surfaces?
Yeah, very much so, and also a lot of whippy curves,
you
know, where there wasn't a lot of transition, etc. And that's that pool skating side of things that I'd sort of seen from the early days of seeing, you know, like maybe I might be getting a little bit out of time here and there with some things, but, you know, like the Salbers and some of the early guys that were raiding pools and stuff in the mid 80s, early 80s and mid 80s. You know, the hardcore punker American guys were the ones we emulated. You know, like they were the ones that don't get me wrong, we always appreciated people like Tony Hawk and all the rest of that sort of stuff, because I guess now that I think about it, most of what we had been seeing up to there was Del Mar,
Oh yeah.
You know, all of the
Soul
big
Bowl and all that
yeah,
stuff.
you know, like all of the big parks in America that were all big concrete bowls and pool replicas, basically.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
so that was always what we sort of were trying to emulate, I think, rather than Vert came in a bit later with ramps and stuff. I mean, everybody built ramps, but they were usually like, you know, like with these dodgy bloody backings on them to hold them up, and you know, like people using bloody crates and pallets and stuff to build ramps.
Absolutely.
You know, like, but I think the way we skated places like Paran and a lot of the early bowls that were built, you know, out here in Australia, it was very much we were trying to emulate what we'd seen people skating Delmar, and I'm trying to think of some of the names of the other Pipeline, and you know, that, I think that was more why we were on that harder edge of, you know, really concentrating on concrete. You know, like
was the and I'm going to, you know, probably jump ahead a little bit, but I'm just wondering, is the fact that you were a bit of a I guess a, you know, rough skater, or you know, you were you know,
I didn't have a lot of finesse.
No, but did that lead you to you know, to setting up like the VSA and doing other things that you did?
Well, actually, it's funny.
Just having that sort of determination.
I'm still trying to track where I started to get more involved in where I started the Paran skate group, and whether it's my mind and the way I was with my education and stuff like that.
So what happened? So what's...
Well, it was interesting because we were all skating and there wasn't a lot of comps and stuff going on at that stage, and and Paran Bowl was this thing, and you know, and then we were starting to, you know, you'd hear about people at here or there, and they were skating these little, like I said, like Ringwood, Bulleen, Doveton. And it was interesting because most of those places were very much from, you know, Sack and Darren's time, you know, and like, you know, people like Noel Forsyth, Johnny McGrath and all those guys. But there was people were wanting to compete. Yeah. And nobody was really sort of standing up. There was nobody sort of sorting out anything about contest series and this, that and the other. And I don't even know how it ever eventuated. Probably one night with all the Elwood boys and all the rest of it, you know, beers and joints and this, that and the other. And it was like, you know, oh, mate, you should fucking, you know, you got the gift of the gab, you know, like you should bloody start something up. And I'm pretty sure we started the Paran skate group first. Tamas Jones and his mum, and I think it was Anne.
That name rings a bell.
And a couple of other people. They were parents of kids that were younger kids when we were sort of, you know, 19-ish or so. Yeah. And they were like, oh, well, I'll act as a secretary for you in this. And all of a sudden it just sort of fell into place. And so I incorporated Paran Skate Group. And I think that had only been running for a few months or so. And it was like, Victorian Skateboarders Association. Like, let's get this, like, going. Yeah, yeah. You know, like, we held a couple of comps at Paran. I think maybe the ramp had just been built, etc. And so... So
about 88, 87?
No, when was Paran? I think Paran ramp was built 85-ish or so. Right. I might be wrong. 87 was Ramp Riot. Right. Right, and I know that I was already running the Paran Skate Group at that stage, and maybe had just started to get into incorporating the Victorian Skateboarders Association, etc. when the first Ramp Riot happened. We were obviously already, like you were saying, you know, we were already embedded in the scene, you know, and we had reputation and stuff like that. So, but yeah, then the VSA just sort of spilled on. And an interesting side note to that is that it wasn't until just a couple, like over the last 2 years, that I found out that there was a Victorian Skateboarders Association in the 70s. And I'm not sure if it's Wedge or someone like that might know about the history of that. Yeah. But it had obviously folded, because by the time we went to register the Victorian Skateboarders Association, it wasn't on you know, whatever the corporation is that looks after that sort of stuff. It wasn't on their books, so we were able to register it straight up. Oh. And so... And that just sort of, it was one of those natural progressions from the Paran Skate Group to then start the VSA. And once again, it was about, let's get comps going in different areas, get a state competition series going. Rage Without Alcohol and like Sport and Rec in Vic were then like skateboarding was just starting to come into being more than just a subculture. So funding was starting, you know, we lobbied for this and that and started getting funding, and I was providing skaters and like all the boys, Sack and all those guys. You know, my whole reason behind getting this going was for like people like Bogdan and all those guys to then be able to do comps. Johnny McGrath did some of the first Rage Without Alcohol comps with, not comps, demos.
Yeah.
That was where we sort of started, was with demos at like Melbourne Show.
Yeah, there you go.
The Moomba.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because they had actually done Moomba back in the late 70s and stuff. So...
so you were instrumental in getting that kind of stuff going?
Well, I guess so. It's kind of...
Well, you were.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm a bit humbled when you look back and sort of think like, well, yeah, I was, I guess, you know, like...
Because I remember speaking to Marty Kent, and he was saying, "Oh, you know," he was talking about all these comps and stuff, like Moomba and bits and pieces like that. And then I'd be going, and now you're telling me, and because I didn't grow up in that whole scene, I'm going, "Hey, what? You created it?"
Yeah. It was strange because it was one of those things where it just naturally spilled on. All of a sudden, because of the gift of the gab that I had, I guess at the time, I was able to lobby. You know, with direction from other, don't get me wrong, like people like Anne Jones and people like that, Tamas's mum, they were instrumental in also helping direct me a little bit more, and like, you know, then you'd find someone where they'd say, oh, we know how to make an application to Sport and Rec to get a grant for this. You know,
that's
like,
awesome.
And so it was like, oh, let's chase that up. Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm sitting in council meetings, you know, as
organised crime.
Yeah, organised crime, exactly. We can pillage these guys, you know, like we can get a comp series paid for, and we can get $1,000 purse for each comp. And
what were you?
Insurance.
What did
insurance. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
You know, like the VSA was the first skateboarding organisation, and in fact, I think one of the first sporting organisations in Australia to actually provide not only public liability insurance, but personal insurance. So if you joined us, we'd teed up with an insurance company. So if you were 16 or above and you were working, and you broke your ankle at a VSA comp, then your wages would be paid until you were back on your feet again.
Bernie Griffiths, you better check that you still got that.
But that was a bit of a, it was one of those things where it was a real, you know, like all of a sudden skateboarders had protection just like a footballer or a tennis player or
that is huge.
And at the time it was like, it was a
but
really
even now
serious
it's
thing.
massive.
Well, is it? I don't
I
know
don't
if
even
it's
know
still
if
available with the way insurance companies have gone over the last 20 years.
I've
I
heard
doubt.
pro skateboarders in America talking about, like, you know, like finally getting a really good shoe deal, probably around, you know, like 97 to 2005. And then they're covered for that sort of stuff because there was so much money in there. But prior to that, no. So I'd say that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Mate, that's you.
And look, I think the shame of it is, I think we're a bit ahead of our time.
Yeah.
You know, like, and also it's a shame that, you know, the way life goes and all the rest of it, you know, by sort of the mid-90s, I'd started to fade out due to all sorts of other dramas, etc. You know, if we'd carried that on and kept it solid and all the rest of it, maybe to this day that sort of stuff would have still been available. But yeah, we really tried to push the boundaries a little bit. And the funny thing is, it's one of those things with governments and kids and appearing to be doing something for kids and for sport and all the rest of it. You know, all of a sudden, Rage Without Alcohol were going, oh, we'll throw money at you if you supply skaters. So, you know, I'd get Johnny McGrath, Sack, CP, Matty Davis, a whole heap of crew. Be like, right, you're getting paid $100 an hour. All you got to do is go up there and just do a few tricks. We'll do one demo at 10, do another demo at 12, another demo at 2. You know, like, so it was funny because I didn't make a lot of money in regards to, like, I couldn't pay myself a wage.
Right.
And I remember, like, through a lot of this, I was working 2 or 3 jobs, you know, like working in rock and roll and, you know, for Lock and Load and working for Mantissa and bands like that. And but then also working in like, you know, a bar or So I had the income and then running all of this stuff on the side. But my focus was, you know, because without sounding sort of, you know, dickish about it, you know, guys like Johnny and Sack and CP and Bog and Dom and Renton and all these boys that are now, you know, like well known, they were the better skaters. They could do ramp stuff, you know, like they could do demos and pull crowds because of what they could do. So I didn't sort of fade into the background, but my skating was different to that, you know. So the great thing for me was that then these boys, because you got to remember too, there was times there where a lot of us were on the dole, you know, da-da-da-da. So subsistence living, you know, like, and the subsistence was skating and getting paid for it. Most of the sponsorship, etc., back then was flow. It wasn't money.
Absolutely.
Right.
So it was, excuse me, it was wheels, boards, T-shirts, you know, pants, sneakers, da-da-da-da.
So, okay, so let me chime in there. Was that enough to be able to sell and have enough equipment to skate as well? Or
Yeah. Oh, look, I did get flowed. You know, like motion was a big part of all of our lives there for a long period of time. If it hadn't have been for people like Frank Somerville, they'd come from a surfing background with Gavin Wood and motion in Lawn, and had come up to Melbourne and opened a shop and were sort of pushing the surf side, but had gone into the skate side and all the rest of it. You know, like guys like Frank were instrumental for a lot of us guys at that stage, because they were picking up the guys that were awesome, and subculture wise people went, fucking these guys are hard.
Absolutely.
But weren't a Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Or a Steve Cavallero, or a, you know, like, so
Closest thing we had to the Alva team.
exactly right. And look, I've got a photo, there's a couple of photos on my How We Rolled site of all of us, and most of us are wearing like white t-shirts, leather jackets, da-da-da-da, and it's almost representative of that classic Alva photo of them in front of the building with the stairway going up and da-da-da-da.
Well, what about that ollie across the upstairs at Motion?
Yeah.
That ollie across. Okay.
Matty Davis.
Matty Davis.
Yeah.
Did he make it?
Yeah.
He'll tell us.
With a
again.
broken arm too. A broken wrist, sorry, with plaster.
No
Actually, that
way.
wasn't above Motion. That was above a house around the corner. It was on High Street that Chris Payne, Sean Sheep, God bless his soul, and I think Matty Davis lived there as well. And it was above a shop, but you had to go down this nasty little fucking alleyway to get to the back door to get up there.
Right.
And it was one of those things where, you know, like it was full back streets Paran, gnarly shit,
man.
you know, like. But yeah, it was in a house that we all shared, and we used to have parties and all the rest of it at. And you know, one night it was like, fucking, we can ollie that fucking gap, hey. And the stairs went like down and then across and then up to the other part, but then the stairs went down this way. So we're talking about this huge gap. And like, I'm trying to remember who actually did it. I know Matty did it, and there was one other person that did it as well.
You mean they?
And I'm down in the thingo taking photos, and all there is this blurred photo of somebody crossing this gap, and you can see the cast, and you know, and that was Matty Davis. You know, like some of the wild shit we did was pretty insane.
Well,
you know,
I
like,
heard about that, man. That was insane.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. I just knew about it.
One of the funniest stories about that place was one of the big parties that was there. I can't remember who it was. It might have even been Matty. Decided, because everybody was drunk and drinking, and I think it was Sean Sheep, I think, that was down the bottom. He was down underneath, like on the ground at the bottom outside, hanging out with a girl down there, obviously tuning her up and all the rest of it. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was Matty or not, but one of the boys hung a piss out of the window up the top and fucking pissed on him down in the, you know, and then it just erupted. Then it was on for young and old, you know what I mean? Like, it might have even been Sean that pissed down on Matty. I can't remember, but there was some hilarious stories at that place too. It was one of those wild skate places, you know, like, and we're talking, you got to remember, like, music and skating had crossed over massively at that stage, you know, like, we were all going to, you know, Chase's Wednesday night, Hard and Fast, Cadillac Bar, this, that and the other. Wherever we went, drink cards thrown at us, you know, we'd skate all day, drink all night, skate all day. Yeah. You know, like, it was what we did. So
was this in the middle of, you know, how is this all in that? What year are we talking there?
So we're talking probably most of the maniacal stuff would have been more from sort of 85 to sort of 91, 92.
Right.
Anti-Gravity Devices series was 91.
Yeah.
Just to get a bit of a tracking of line, 87 was the first ramp ride, 88 was the second, I think, from memory. So
one of those was in Torquay, right?
Yeah, that's right. And Motion actually did a demo at the 87 on the mini ramp they just built out the front of Rip Curl.
Oh, okay.
I've got a few photos from that as well.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because sort of VSA and us didn't get a lot of support from 540 magazine and Hardcore, and
right.
It was almost like they'd created us as an opposition.
Mm-hmm.
So because they were obviously bringing in the Americans and you know, running bigger, higher dollar contest series, etc., whereas we were doing the more localized, you know, Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia sort of con series, you know, like, so you know, I still remember some of the classic things from that time period of you know, a few of us getting our noses out of joint because there'd be a comp on that was a hardcore run comp and 540 would cover it in the magazine. And even if, say, Bogdan won the comp, the photos would be of the 2 or 3 sponsored hardcore skaters rather than Bogdan, you know, like, or Sack wouldn't get a photo for doing something because we weren't linked to hardcore.
Companies don't do that,
you know,
do
like,
they?
No. Apparently they do. I'm probably going to get myself into a hell of a lot of shit for saying this too, but
okay.
it was interesting, you know, like
edit it out.
Yeah,
live.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
the dynamics were it was interesting because you got to remember too, like this was when the bubble was bursting. You know, like skateboarding wasn't just subculture anymore. All of a sudden, you had big business coming into this, and you know there was companies starting
put down their cricket bats.
Bingo, and companies were starting up where they were investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into bringing product in from America to supply shops and everything out here, and da-da-da-da. So we were definitely sort of like the alvas, you know, all of our guys would fuck up, you know, like you'd roll up at a comp, have a few beers, they'd be saying you can't fucking drink it, can't get fucking, you know, like you cause dramas and, you know, da-da-da-da, and we would just be who we were, and that was skateboarders.
Yeah,
you know, not, you know, prissy, you know, we're here to, you know, represent our sponsors.
Yeah, yeah.
We were there to go, we're going to get the biggest trick here today, you know, like, yeah, so things were sort of, became difficult at times.
But all that time you were running VSA?
Yeah, that's right.
So you were being a responsible contest organiser?
Yeah, that might be stretching it a little bit, but yeah.
Just at the same time, Joe Bjelke-Petersen was empowering Queensland.
So yeah, exactly right.
I think it could be a bit loose.
It's funny because Simon made a bit of a comment on a message he said earlier on Facebook.
Simon Reynolds. He just
yeah.
loves to hear his name.
Yeah, Sackman. Where he sort of said that. Oh shit! I've just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, guys.
What were we talking about? I think he might have been talking about your reference and your mark in skateboarding.
No, I wasn't actually going to go there. It was a different. Was it actually a different point? Yeah. I do apologise. Next question.
No, I'm just.
I have a question.
Yep.
Oh yes.
So about that period, there was a little boy from Gladstone Park who sent in a question for you.
Yep.
And he'd like to know, how did that change coming from mid-80s nowheredom to being like the drink card guy? And was that a positive effect or was it a negative effect for a lot of your crew and stuff?
Yeah.
And how did that change?
Well, as I said, I guess the biggest point we've got to remember with this was that, you know, like people like Matt Davis and myself and a few other boys were working in rock and roll. And that was because Chris Payne and guys like that were in bands. So we lived with each other, we crewed with each other, like Chris and his girlfriend Narelle, myself and my ex-girlfriend Sharon and other crew. We all lived in share houses, we all lived together, we all skated together, we all went out together. Killing Time and Mantissa, you know, had come out of Compressed Heads and a couple of other earlier bands. We sort of fell in and started working with them. So maybe like sort of in a similar way to sort of what we were talking about the imagery of Alva and us, we were very much on that hardcore rock and roll, drinking, partying sort of skateboarders. You know, we weren't the clean cut Bones Brigade sort of image. You know, like, so the crossover was sort of there for a long period of time. But obviously, you know, as things go, you know, as that recognition comes on and then you start going places, and especially with the rock and roll side of things, because then we were being recognised not only for being like local Paran skateboarders, but we were working for bands. So you do the pub circuit and stuff, and then some of the places we'd go to would be after hours clubs where it was for the industry or for rock and roll, so you'd get known that way. So the partying and the reputation definitely started to take over. Obviously then, you know, there's all the peripheral stuff of partying, etc., that comes on. So things got wild, you know, like, and you're living that rock and roll lifestyle, but or as a skateboarder as well. So, you know, people burn out, you know, you make mistakes, you do this, you do that, you do the other. I don't know that it directly affected who we were as skateboarders, in regards to that it was, you know, it dragged us all away from it or whatever, but it definitely did, you know, like, you know, having that reputation and you know, like, in all seriousness, like, you know, out of 7 nights in the week, you know, we'd be out at clubs 5 nights a week, you know, so it obviously does start to take its toll, even if you don't recognise it. And I think that might be probably the proper way to sort of put it, is that, you know, you don't start to recognise, and all of a sudden you're heading down pathways that maybe aren't the best for you.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, for sure. You know, like, it's always hard to be on top of your game in that department. I mean, I guess.
But it was interesting too, because it also fueled then the hardcore skateboarder edge.
Mm.
You know, like,
which is
I've got a lot of fond memories.
Yeah, possibly an Aussie tradition.
Very much so. And look, I've got a lot of fond memories of. I mean, this is a whole probably other segment again. Is my memories with Chris Payne and Matty Davis and Jason Ellis and a few of the other crew, because we were all right into the hard rock scene, and obviously Chris was, you know, a fantastic guitarist, and Mantissa were an awesome band and stuff. You know, we'd work with them. So there was this secondary sort of not fame, but notoriety.
Yeah.
Second circle.
And a second circle. You know, so you're doing what you're doing in skateboarding, but then you're also having to fulfill, and because like I was working as a roadie, and, you know, like working directly for bands as a roadie, but also doing a bit of Lock and Load stuff. Like Matty worked for Lock and Load for many years. So then you're starting to try and juggle 2 lifestyles, you know, and so when you're out drinking 5 or 6 nights a week and partying and doing all the other things that come along with partying, then, you know, like, the lines start to get blurred, the skating doesn't happen as much, you know, like, or, you know, there's some classic times of comp series, you know, like getting there and we'd all been partying until 5 o'clock in the morning, and then we're at 8 o'clock in the morning setting up ramps and getting ready for a comp, and da-da-da-da, and like 5 of the people that are supposed to be fucking your stars in the comp are all fucking throwing up and, you know, trying to fucking drink water and actually be able to ride a skateboard, you know, so myself included. Like, you know,
like it wasn't a demo.
Exactly, you know, so, but there's some hilarious memories and moments around that as well. You know, like, it was all taken in the stride back then too. You see, you got to remember, like, there wasn't the connotation or the downward looking at that sort of stuff back then, because, you know, you're in your 20s, you're partying hard, you know, like, you're holding down a lifestyle and all the rest of it. You're not hurting anybody. If anybody, you're hurting yourself, you know, like.
VHS was just coming out, right?
Yeah.
Like, but so, like, back then, like, all your role models were on paper, you know? And except for the ones coming off vinyl, in regards to rock and roll.
That's right.
You know, like, you might read some story or whatever, but, like, you guys played it the way you saw it, you know? Like,
and we played it hard.
I know.
We all did. You know, like, you know, even, you know, like, even the mellower of us, you know, like, you know, without sort of, you know, saying things out of school and everything, you know, like, Gotsy was one of those guys that was very much the quiet, sit in the background, you know, and he'd have his drinks at Chases and all the rest of it. We'd all be fucking going off chasing girls and all the rest of it. He'd chase his girls too, but, you know, he'd be the one that'd be sitting there and he'd just tipple all night. Yeah. You know, like, really quiet, mellow in the background. You know, there'd be, you know, then there'd be 4 of us that'd be running around, you know, causing dramas. Fucking one bloke gets into a punch on, we're out the front fucking trying to save him, and this, that and the other and all the rest of it. And Gotsy would just be standing there in the background having a sip of your beer. You know, like, So it's you know, and that goes for everybody. There was times where everybody was the mellow cat and da-da-da-da, but
I can't see Gotsy going off.
Never.
He's too nice. And
Never.
He's just like
he was one of those beautiful, and Kobe for that matter too. Both beautiful human beings, you know, like and Gotsy particularly. You know, he was always Gotsy, you know. Whereas I guess people like myself and a few of the other boys, you know, we would have our wild side and all the rest of it, where we'd sort of let loose and, you know, not be who we normally were and get ramped up really easily and da-da-da-da. But, you know, guys like Gotsy and that were always, you know, they were very much who they were. And I mean, Gotsy, with his graphic stuff and some of the design work and did when he went with SMC and, you know, I think I don't know if he's still with them.
I think he's at Evolve.
Like at Evolve, yeah, which SMC
like,
became Evolve and all the rest of it. You know, you know, Gotsy was, while he was in the background with a lot of things, and he was another one of those guys that was a bit of a mellow skater. Was he the art director down at Dudes? Yeah, there you go. You know, so he was very, like, he was once again like a bit, I guess, in myself in the way of the background of running the sport. He was in the background of the artistic side and of the t-shirts and of the clothing and
the merchandise,
and, you know, like merchandising.
I think that really, you know, that spilled right over into retail for him too. You know, like he like Evolve's always been so unique, and you know he would have played a very long, solid role in that. You know, like you can see it every time you go in there. Yeah, good dude.
I have a question from Sack.
Oh, here we go.
Look out.
Yeah. Should I be scared?
Ask Shane George about waking up and me with a pair of scissors ready to cut off his extension. He was asleep on the lounge chair in my pad in Paran.
So this was at that place that we were talking about above High Street where Matty Davis did the ollie. Big night. Wasted night. Everybody will probably remember I had a lot of hair back in the day, down to here, curly hair.
Yeah.
So I'd passed out on a chair, probably similar to sort of this. And I remember waking up to the sound of scissors, you know, like, and there's Sack standing over me. I can go with a pair of scissors taking off the whole side of my hair.
No.
Now, look, Sack and I go back a long way. I used to think I was hard, but I was never as hard as Sack. He and I had many words previously, but there'd never been a point where I would have ever thought of going, we had a lot of respect between each other, but I also respected Sack as, you know, we're talking, you know, in effect, we're talking Australian skate royalty here, you know, like, and even back then,
Simon,
in the late 80s, you know, Sack was, you know, Noble Park Crew, 3174, Bloodbath, you know, like,
mate. Legendary.
So I wake up, I can't remember if TP was still alive then. I think TP was in the room, Terry Probin. God bless his soul. Another one of those beautiful humans who was taken too early. And a couple of other people in the room too. So yeah, I've woken up to Sack taking off the whole side of my hair with a pair of scissors. And from my memory, we'll have to speak to Sack again to get the actual probable truth, but from my memory of it, I've woken up and gone, what the fuck? And gone, because he was standing there with my hair and a pair of scissors right in front of me, I mean, like over me. And I remember going, bang. And from my memory, which is pretty vague, but I have a very strong memory of him going like that and actually pulling up and not actually flogging me.
Wow.
And from memory, I cracked the shits, did a typical Shano thing and cracked the shits. You're all fucking cunts and da-da-da-da, and excuse the language to all the underages here, etc. And stormed out of the joint and fucking and stormed out. And I don't think I talked to him for a few days. So, but I can't believe he can actually remember that. That's hilarious. Until you actually said it, I'd almost completely forgotten about that too. So, but this ties back into where we were about the wild side of things. Like as skateboarders, we were pretty full on. We were pretty wild. Like, you know, big part of all of our crew was, if you're gonna give the piss, you have to take the piss.
Yeah.
You know, like, sorry, if you're going to take the piss out of someone, you've got to be able to receive it.
And we
were all hard on each other. We used to, you know, there was a lot of to and fro and a lot of, you know, stirring the shit out of each other and trying to wind each other up, and because we all lived in each other's pockets for several years, you know, like as I said, you know, like the crew that we're sort of talking about, especially like your Matty Davis's, Sack, CP, his partner, my partner at the time, and a few spill-on crew and all the rest of it, the Prowse girls, Drew Basford and guys, Magnus Morris and that, who were Guilt Filter, the Mantissa crew, you know, da-da-da-da. It was a wild fucking time, you know, like, and you tried to, you know, embarrass and upset crew that were your mates, because that's what you do, you know, like it's the Aussie way,
Absolutely.
you know, so they were just having fun and they knew it had set me off, you know, so...
So talking about, you know, the music scene was massive, the skating kind of started to suffer a little bit. What kind of a toll did that take on you?
Yeah, well, I had a sort of a long and unwinding downfall, I guess, in a way. I'm wondering if we should get into this before we sort of talk about, like, maybe... no, actually, we'll get back to Tom and...
I'm happy to go with... This is your side.
What was it called?
The anti-gravity series?
Yeah, not Razor's Edge.
91,
what was it called?
What
was his skate park called? No, the one he had in out Geelong way.
River's Edge.
River's Edge.
Oh, River's Edge,
I had Razor's Edge in my head for some strange reason. River's Edge.
Because of the Razorbacks up in the
yeah, exactly.
Oh, we were talking about before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's all right. We'll keep going down this path. We'll come back because I think it's important. Like, you know, 91 was that anti-gravity series, which was...
Well, why don't we talk about that then?
All right, well,
yeah, totally. Let's try and stick chronological.
So we've done, with PSG and VSA, we've done various comp series. Like, obviously, PSG was always based at Paran. So, bowl comps, ramp comps, you know, like... and then as we sort of moved into the late 80s and into the early 90s, VSA was really kicking off. We started to hold more comp series here and there. Motion, we were doing demos with Motion, like I can remember one at Traralgon, and I remember doing a Motion trip all through sort of, you know, the Gippslandy area and stuff of Melbourne.
So what's Motion?
Man, Motion was Frank Somerville and another person.
There would have been bugger all down there then, man.
And there was. But mind you, I think there was a little, like once again, a dish or a pond at Traralgon.
Yep.
You know, and da-da-da-da, and they were very much, back then, the facilities they built in these remote, in these country areas were very much just dishes with a little bit of curve and banking and da-da-da-da. Eltham Fish Ponds is one that we haven't talked about either, but anyway.
There you go.
Used to hit it quite regularly. Yeah, so by the time we were sort of getting to 90, like 89, 90, you know, we're talking about like RWA being ramped right up, Rage Without Alcohol, demo series and comps and da-da-da, and then managed to pull this comp series together. We got funding from Sport and Rec, I believe, and from memory, like the funding we got was something like, you know, $40,000 or something like that. And at that time, that was just absolutely
91.
Unheard of. You know,
that's like about 150 grand now.
Yeah. And so we had like a 5 or 6 location comp series through the year. I think Mornington might have been a spot that we had one.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember exactly where we had them all. Paran Ramp was one.
Wezza?
Yeah, I think Werribee might have been one as well.
Lincoln put a photo up somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Carbon grind.
Yeah, so, but yeah, so we had like, you know, $2,500 purses at each comp. That was for like winning in your class, and
that's not.
And we had, you know, we had open and under 16s and, you know, under 12s, and
that's not for the locals going up against US pros that were bought out to just get prize money or anything like that, was it?
Well, see, the funny thing was, by then I was actually struggling to actually be able to. I couldn't skate in any of these comps because I was running them, and you know, like, and I had Matty Davis as MC, and you know, like da-da-da-da, and so there was a few of us that we weren't able to skate in any of these comps, or if we did, we were, you know, it was like at Paran Bowl we'd have a Masters or an open section, you know, and it'd be, you know, everybody doing like layback slides and fucking, you know, like da-da-da-da.
Masters would have been 23.
Yeah, exactly. Back then it was. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, the 91 anti-gravity devices is what the series was called. The anti-gravity devices series. We'd done all special artwork. We'd promoted it. We had flyers, posters, this and the other. River's Edge was not long open, I believe, from my memory at that stage, and you know, like we managed to, through other crew, you know, like tee up Tom and have that as an event and all the rest of it. And that was probably the most successful and the best of the series that we ever ran in regards to running a consolidated Victorian-wide competition series. So you had to compete in all 5 or 6 events to gain points. To get to the end game. You know, so that was probably the pinnacle of where we got to with the VSA.
So can I ask a question? Was that happening elsewhere in the world? Did you know about that, or was that something you just thought, well, let's just take the points forward?
Yeah,
like a Grand Prix sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that. I think maybe we'd sort of cottoned on. I think it would have been happening in America at that stage, and maybe we'd sort of cottoned on to the way they'd run a few of the pool series there, like, you know, having Upland, Pipeline.
It sort of
once again, I can't remember the other 2 or 3 that I need to remember.
The Big O.
Yeah, Big O, and places like that where they'd have a comp series for all of them, you know.
But did you know that that's how they scored and ran the comps?
Yeah, well, we were lucky. See, we were lucky because of people like the guys that I've been talking about. You know, like pros would come out, you know, like even for like the 87. Because we remember, by the time 91 came, we'd had Ramp Right 1 and Ramp Right 2. We had guys that were judging in Australia, you know, that were putting their hand up to judge and would then be picked to judge it at different comps and different vert comps and all the rest of it around the state and around the country. So you were able to get guys that were able to have consistent judging and consistency in their trick judgment and run judgment. So by 91, you know, we were having guys that were on the ramp who were just specifically judging and not skating in any of the comps.
Right.
You know, so we had gotten all of our judging and our criteria down, and we were starting to build that consistency of competition, you know, so...
Style, consistency and difficulty of trick.
Exactly right.
Which became pretty much the benchmark.
Yep.
It's what we used in all the...
Yep. That's exactly right.
Also, you used that.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly the same, yeah. And that would have come from Trav and Flaz and all those guys chiming in. And
that's exactly right, mate. Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, having people like John McGrath and stuff putting their hand up to judge comps, you know, it was like, well, mate, you're a style master and a legend in your own right, and you've come from the very roots of everything. Sack used to throw his hand up and judging comps and stuff as well. Yeah. So to have people like that judging, and then they would judge every comp in that series. So then you've got a consistency of judging as well. Because prior to that, it was sort of like you were trying to throw stuff together. You know, you'd turn up on the day and all of a sudden 2 of the guys that you'd already spoken to, you were going to pay them to judge and all the rest of it, they wouldn't turn up, and you'd find out, you know, they'd gone out to so-and-so the night before and got drunk and they're not coming. Yeah. You know, so you had to go, do you want to judge? And once again, when I say, do you want to judge, it wasn't just like some Joe Blow out of the thingo, you know. Someone like Sack or Johnny would go, fucking he knows style, he knows fucking, you know, we'll get him to judge. You know, like, okay, we'll get him to judge and fill the gap. But by sort of 91, I reckon we were actually getting a lot more solid with it, you know, so...
where did the name come from?
Anti-gravity devices.
Yeah.
From memory, I think... I've got a feeling from memory because Drew Basford from Guilt Filter actually did a lot of the artwork for me. You'll see an old VSA logo with an ink pen drawn skateboard with VSA down the side of it and stuff like that. He'd done a lot of those logos for me. The anti-gravity devices flyer was done by Drew.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he and I came up with the anti-gravity devices thing because it was that sort of thing of, you know, you're out of the ramp and all the rest of it, you're defying gravity.
You know,
exactly. So that's where we got the anti-gravity devices sort of name
and
from.
Devices
just for that comp series. Yeah.
Devices being
the skateboard.
Yeah, right.
So the anti-gravity device was the skateboard.
Well, like that photo that Lincoln put up today, like just the fun box setup, you know, like totally different to the way they are now. Like one side was a launch ramp.
Yeah.
Into a bank.
That's right.
And 2 dudes going over that top of the tabletop. Benny Harnering, you know?
Yeah,
so it's all about anti-gravity, you know?
Yeah.
It was the time.
So I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. I probably have to credit that towards Drew, you know, like more than myself. So yeah, and thinking more and more back on this sort of stuff and what we've talked about, their side logo that you're using,
yes,
I'm pretty sure was Drew Basford.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
If he's out there and he ever hears this and all the rest of it, let us know if it was you, mate, but I'm pretty sure that it was.
That would be very
And I can't
awesome.
remember if it was meant to be a depiction of me because of the hair and all the rest of it and da-da-da-da, or if it was just a free-form sort of picture.
Yeah.
So,
It's pretty awesome.
Well, it's got hair on two sides, so it can't be.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's pretty cool. Well, if that's the case, we need to, that would
Yeah,
be...
well, I believe Drew is on Facebook and all the rest of it.
Okay.
He's quite reserved and does his own thing these days and all the rest. I think he lives in Europe somewhere or
Okay,
something
right.
like that. So England.
Drew.
Because how did you get that graphic?
He drew it.
Yeah,
Pen and ink drawing.
but then he just gave it to you?
Yeah, it was just a picture that was what we used to do back then. Because you got to remember, we're talking before bloody
Oh, yeah.
technology.
Before technology.
You know, there was
Right.
no mobile phones that could take pictures. There was no. Internet was in its basic infancy back then. There was no.
But I just know that when I got this drawing, and I've got files, millions of files of it. But it's but when I got it, it was on tracing paper.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he did it on.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
pencil and ink.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then
they could scan it and then.
No, it was more just that was the piece of paper that we had there while we were drinking and smoking.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
It is
And
so.
I managed to keep it and put it away and then
Yeah, it's
refound
crazy.
it like, 16, 18 months ago.
Yeah.
No way.
In amongst a whole heap of box of stuff like the original flyers for the anti-gravity device series and
So
you know
good.
like plans
Smile on
of
his face, no?
I've got plans of Elwood and
Really?
Fitzroy and stuff involved in consultation with the councils and stuff in regards.
Yep, we've kept the children up pretty late here.
Yes, we have.
Oh,
It's been a bugger of a Marchie.
We're at Black Flies. So anyway, there's some little kids out there that are listening about this anti-gravity shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they probably want to hear their names. Was there any rippers coming through, you know?
Yeah, well, obviously, back in that, we're talking about the Rentons, we're talking about the Dom Keckages, we're talking about
we can bring people, like we all know those guys are absolute legends. What about like any of the Werribee crew? I bet you there's a couple of...
Scuddy.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about Scuddy, or
Yeah,
who are you inferring
Lincoln
towards?
Scott. Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bit of a legend. And VSA skate
way.
zines, photocopies we're talking about here.
No way.
Okay, Perfect Transition magazine.
Yes.
Remember Posnut?
Not the dude. No.
Paul Pottsma.
Yeah, right.
Posnut, another absolute legend of the early scenes. Punk Az was in with all of the old Borgie crew and all the rest of it. He started Perfect Transition magazine.
No way.
Probably one of the very first.
Sorry, who was that?
Posnut,
Yeah.
Paul Pottsma.
And was Dave Ross involved in
Yes,
that?
very much so. Dave Ross will be able to fill you in a
Yeah.
bit more on Pos and that. Once again, another one of those guys that, was sort of on the fringes but did so much for the sport. I was lucky enough to know him as a friend. He was a wild motherfucker too. Like, he was crazy. The cackle of a laugh on Pottsma, on Pos. He was one of those guys that as soon as you heard him laugh, you couldn't help but laugh yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, he started Perfect Transition magazine out of nothing. It started as a photocopied zine
Yeah.
and then turned into a colour magazine, pre-540, pre-anything else that started.
And I was speaking to Tony Hallam about that. I'm transcribing his interview, and he said that, he was involved in that. He used to just write stuff in.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of crew did.
And was it Pos, is it?
Yeah, Pos.
Yeah, Pos used to work at a printing place, I
That's
think.
exactly right.
Yeah, and he used to...
over this way too.
Oh,
somewhere.
really?
Yeah, somewhere
in,
here
in Brunswick
area.
somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And he used to print them off.
Where's the mob that does all the big rock and roll posters and all the rest of it? They're not far from
Johnny
here
Rock
somewhere.
Posters. They're up here somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure he worked for them.
Oh.
And that's where he got his
I know
printing and
that.
everything
I know
done.
Johnny.
Yeah.
I'll ask asking.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I might
right.
be wrong, but I have a sneaking suspicion that was who he worked for.
Yeah,
So
right. He's over the back here somewhere. Just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
down
yeah,
near
yeah.
the creek.
yeah. So but yeah, once again, another one of those guys who was instrumental in the sport that doesn't really get a lot of recognition in regards to actually promoting the sport, and it was an underground magazine.
Yeah.
So from that, we got him to help out with like the PSG scene, so magazine, which was the Paran Skate Group fanzine. And once again, we're talking about, a magazine this big that was photocopied and
Given away.
Yeah, and given away.
Yeah.
And we did a couple of VSA ones like that as well.
Yep.
So, but yeah, look, it's funny when you were saying about, like the young up and comers and all the rest of it. The biggest problem I've got is I'm 51 years old. I've been out of the scene for 20 years, just come back into it in the last 2 years. So I've got a lot of lost memories in regards to who was who and all the rest of it.
Imagine, like, you would have been some Geelong, like, little kids there, like Dan Carney would have been maybe out there.
Now we're talking Dan and Barry.
There you go.
Bazakani. Mate, he was, once again, he threw his hat in the ring so many times to help us out. Dan was like this big.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I got a couple of photos of him from Paran when he met Chris Miller, when Chris skated at Paran and stuff. Yeah, once again, another one of those young fellas that we took under the wing and, was part of the crew and all of that sort of thing. So, but Barry himself too, like, absolute, he was a legend in regards to helping out with the VSA. If we needed eskies, we needed someone to go and get ice, we needed someone to do this or whatever. Barry was the first one to go, I'll go and get that sorted, mate. There was a lot of guys like that, but Barry and Dan, I've reconnected recently with Dan too, send a shout out to Dan as well. He's an absolute legend of a bloke, heart bigger than Texas once again, so.
All right, what about, the only other, we mentioned Scutto, what about Scotty Briscoe, remember him?
No, didn't have a lot to do with Scotty Briscoe. I know the name, but didn't have a lot to do with him myself personally, so.
No, that's all good.
Yeah.
Well, there's got to be stacks of other dudes, but
there is.
They can just write their names on Facebook, eh?
Yeah.
So this was around up to 91, was it? Was this around the...
Yeah, so 91 was the anti-gravity devices series,
devices.
and so then we still carried on with things probably a little bit heavily. Geez, I need a pee, I tell you now.
Yeah.
92...
Just take a bottle, mate.
Yeah, I might have to. I'll tell you what, under the table.
We could
take three.
We can always take an ad break. And
if we can take an ad break, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It'll take me...
We've got 3 dunnies, we can all piss at once.
All right, no worries. Yeah, well, it'll take me 3 seconds, trust me.
We're going to go...
Two.
I'm going to cut... Oh, I'm going to cut here. Yeah, go for it.
I'm going too.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a 5-minute break for 10 minutes and back in half an hour. So these guys can go to the bathroom. I'm going to try and fix up some of these problems. We've had a few noise problems on the way through, but our batteries are running out, but we're doing it as best we can. Stay tuned, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. Talk amongst yourselves.
I was still skating and still involved in the scene, but VSA had started to wind down.
Yep, sure, man. It was getting harder. as it transitioned from Vert to Street, it just got harder. You got a different audience. Dudes weren't fucking into it, you know.
Tell you what, it's nice that you can leave a beer on the ground. Did we have another one out there or not?
Are those?
Did I have another one left?
Doesn't matter. There's stacks of these other
Wasabi?
ones. Yeah.
We're
Oh,
still,
good. You getting any response?
still got audio running.
You got, well, have we?
Yeah, we've still got audio running, so everyone knows that we're still online.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah, it's ran into that next office. Just go through that door, turn left, and in the white fridge.
So don't be bagging anyone out, because they can probably hear us.
Bagging anyone out. The Penguin bag anybody out. Come on. Jesus.
That's better.
Send $10, I'll bag your opponents out. There you go. Welcome,
All right, let's go.
Welcome to Melbourne, hipster.
Oh. I'm just trying to get some power going. Oh, that's turned.
Oh.
What a pisser. You got it.
Sorry about that, Aaron, but I don't know if you noticed, mate, but I was like going like this. Fucking starting to cross my legs and fucking squidge and fidge and...
Oh, that's awesome.
See what Trev's not drinking?
Yeah. No, he doesn't drink beer anymore.
Good man.
Because he's battling cancer hard at the moment, so...
Is he?
Yeah,
God.
he's not doing good.
No, that's not good. Well, we're all on.
Yep, no worries.
So you going now with that?
Right, we're going to be back on. And welcome back, everybody. Let's just see if this is all working. I hope it's working, and I hope you're getting a good signal at home.
Sorry, gang.
So we're going to come back in, and as you can see, Shane is just rolling himself
A cigarette.
a massive doob.
I wish. You get nothing common sense out of me after that, that's for sure.
That's right.
Anyway, where were we?
So we're talking
Geelong crew and stuff.
just like the
And general
obviously,
crew.
Look, you know, I guess the parameters of the question were like, you know, like you created a legacy, you know, by
Thank you.
doing that.
Thank
you
you.
did, you know, like I said before, you know, like when we started doing comps with the Aussies, you know, like the experience that you created for all those people that helped me, definitely was using that criteria, you know. And
Well, it was funny because we didn't see it at the time as, you know, like, funnily enough, my mother said to me over the last couple of days that maybe we were a bit ahead of our time. I think maybe, you know, if things hadn't gone the way they had, you know, in the personal side of life and, you know, with issues for myself and, you know, a couple of other people, etc. But we probably, you know, we could have run it a lot harder and for a lot longer. You know, like life does what it does to you and it throws different challenges at you and, you know, things change and sort of by 94, 95, you know, I'd sort of faded out a little bit more from that full comp scene and, you know, and being involved heavily in regards to, you know, running comps and the VSA, etc. and
Well, it
had
takes
found
its
other
toll, man.
distractions.
Like
it did.
It's an enormous amount. Like
I think it was less about the skateboarding and the running it. I think it was probably more lifestyle
periphery.
choices.
Yeah, but like tell people what it's an enormous amount of energy, I reckon, to get it up and going. Particularly when you're running a, you know, like you've got a job already, and you decide to do this.
Yeah.
If it's more than just a grassroots comp, it requires like you got to get people there, man. You don't want to.
Well, I tried very hard to get it to the point where I could make a living out of it.
Yeah, right.
But my obligation to my crew, and once again, please don't take this as self-righteous and all the rest of it, because it's not. But my obligation to the crew was the skaters that were doing the demos and the cost that it involved to put the comps on and put the prize money on to make it worth those skaters committing themselves to skate was more important than me making $1 out of it.
Well, I always saw it the same way. Yeah, absolutely.
And I would have loved to have been like a fucking, I'm going to get in more trouble here, hardcore or a whatever. Yeah, you know, I would have loved to have been a $150,000 a year CEO, you know, like driving around in a Range Rover, beep, and all the rest of it. But you know, really, where we were at that sort of ground level and all the rest of it, my commitment, like me coercing all of these guys to continually follow me and continually commit to the comps that I was putting on or the demos that I was putting on, them getting paid was more important in the long run than me making $1. Like I said, I was working in 2 or 3 different industries, you know, so, you know, I was able to make a living and cover my bills and this and the other. If, you know, once again, if, you know, lifestyle choices, you know, made that hard for me, but that was my own personal choice. But it was more important at the stage the way I viewed things, and luckily enough with the people that I had, that we were working more towards promoting the sport and promoting and providing an ability for sustenance for the skaters that were committing to doing the demos and doing the comps, you know. So that was always the main focus of it. Like
just to put it in perspective of legacy, right? So when I joined the VSA a few years ago when I was a young man, and like they started rolling out these leagues comps, right? Which are now, like, the VSA is not a great organisation; it still requires funding and stuff. But like, there's a national, this series of leagues comps now rolls out nationally, you know, and it's amazing, you know. Like, it's just, and again, it all comes back to what you started doing. This grassroots comps creates the future for kids to skate today, because you get the skate park to your own, you know. You got the pressure of skating in front of people. You create lines. People can see you can do it. Then it leads to, you want to be really try and make a living out of skating. Well, at least we know you can do demos. And all that kind of stuff. Like, kids still. You know,
and I think some of the really positive spill-ons from this, I think, probably have been too that how many facilities there are around Victoria now, or even look at any state in Australia. You look at how they get built, how often they get built. The lobbying for them's a lot easier in a lot of ways. Sometimes it might take a couple of years, maybe 4 or 5 years for some places in remote areas or, you know, more country areas to finally get the funding to build something. But, you know, we definitely started to push the edge. Once we were running these comps, etc., we started to realise how few facilities there were. And so then you started to see, you know, Knox, Fitzroy, Vermont, all these facilities getting built, Elwood. That was directly out of us and being involved with 1 or 2 facilities. Elwood in particular was one that we had, as the VSA, had a bit of a push in. We did help out with Fitzroy, but I think probably more of that would probably go more back towards Gregor Rankin and Snake Pit and those guys. I think
little baby Will Stiles was involved in that too.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. So, you know, like, it's interesting. Look, and right now, like, and stuff that we're talking about, like, I am a little bit humbled in the way that even, you know, like you were edging towards before about that message from Simon, you know, saying, you know, a lot of, you know, majority of skaters in Victoria, etc., should be, you know, sort of listening to this and you know, and thanking me for where I never saw it that way, and I still don't really see it that way. But I guess we did pave the way.
I don't either, but I've got much less respect, Ross, but to you.
Thank you.
But like, this is I guess this is what it is. It's their side. Like, people do need to know. You know, like what I've worked in skateboarding for a really long time, and I see now a generation of skateboarders that just look over their shoulder and they just go, "Oh, this shit's been here forever," right? And they just assume.
Well, see, we didn't have the facilities. We were skating car parks, curbs.
We were
finding, you know, like the waves out the front of the art centre. You know, we'd do raids and hits on that and try and get 2 runs in on it before security come flying out, because that was the only curves that you could find.
Do you see the cover of the second last slam? Someone's ollied from the top of one across to the...
No way, I didn't see that.
I'll give you a copy.
You know, we were hitting car parks, we were hitting banks, we were hitting drainage ditches, we were starved for facilities back then. That
car park in the city with the corkscrew.
Yeah.
And that had been forgotten. And then remember Travis Purcell telling me about that. And then, like, now it's a thing again. You know, I guess the Secchi Press crew from New Zealand shut that down though.
And as somebody who was doing all of this back then, it's awesome to see now that the lobbying for facilities to be built is still just as strong. Yeah. That facilities are getting built, and a great thing is hearing people, you know, talk about, like, you know, Simon's mentioned a few times through Facebook, etc. You know, we need a bloody Del Mar in Adelaide. You know, like, we need a Priscilla
Yeah.
We need a Priscilla in Adelaide.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like,
and that's what we're going to work now to get right. Is because there's no point just building another bowl.
Because all of these and to a degree, like, while it's good that we're getting these flatlandy, what did you call them earlier on?
Plazas.
Yeah, plaza sort of skate areas. You know, where you've got, you know, rails and this and the other and little hips, but there's no quarter pipes. There's no consistency and flow of skateboarding. It's all one hit stuff. You know, like,
Well,
I think it's important we still need to have that evolvement of pool skating and of consistent lines and of back-to-back tricks.
I think there should be little. I think like what Johnny did at Noble Park with that snake run.
Yeah.
Like that snake run has accelerated how quickly kids skate transition, man. And like when that thing first opened, all anyone ever did was like kick to kick across one side to the other because the thing was so big. And you go there now, and it's just like big, powerful Smiths and
exactly. And please, and once again, don't, you know, and you see with a lot of the American stuff that's being built, you know, especially because I get Confusion magazine now. I subscribe to that. It's all about the underground and the building of sort of illegal stuff under freeways and things like that. You look at a lot of those places that are being built, and there is one hit on each wall, but flow between wall to wall, and we're talking completely different transitions and lead ups and stuff. And you got, you know, your power humps in the middle, and guys are creating lines out of something where you look at it and you go, how the fuck did you get a line out of that, you know? And
like Washington Street, that's
you know, like it's mental, you know, like it's amazing to see there is still that hardcore edge to skating where it's not about the quality of it, it's what trick you can pull out of that facility.
I guess I mean Lucas has just added, I called new parks shitholes. But then again,
shitholes. But going back to what I was saying, Lucas, I think there needs to be some form of accountability.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, that's a problem. You know, like you need.
Well, Catherine is a classic example. We talked about this earlier on. Yeah. Like, Catherine's got a skate facility. Right? We're in the middle of absolute nowhere. We're 300 odd kilometres from Darwin. You know, we're a remote area. They built a skate park, but what they did, they managed to find some convict plans. Rather than actually employ convict to come and build it, a couple of local who build drains and bridges to build it for them.
Yeah.
So the transitions are all rough and out of shape. There's no consistency of line between anything. The one bowl end sort of, you know, half pipey sort of section is that big that unless you were a skater of immense skill, you're not going to be able to even grind the bloody thing.
Right.
You know, so roll down to like your fun box thing with your board slide. It's that high that only someone that can pop an ollie 2 feet out is going to be able to get onto it to no slide it or grind it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So
I've probably copied something that is like a park up the road from somewhere that's like a training facility into a more, you know, advanced facility and stuff like that. So yeah, like that's what I mean. Like an accountability in skate park design would be really good, you know. So
and it's awesome to see that there are now, you know, 4 or 5 different companies that are building them, and the guys that are building them are guys that have been skaters for 25 years and now they're concreters. Yeah. Sac's been involved in many facilities built around the country, you know, like working for different guys and all the rest of it, and he's had his hand in the construction of some amazing places, but skaters are building them.
That's right.
Not a fucking local council concreter.
That's right. That's a big change. I think shooters out there doing a few.
Yep. You know, so there are some good guys here in this country that are building some really good facilities.
It'll only get better.
And that's the big thing now, like you were saying. Is more about making sure that the guys that have the experience are building them, not.
But the problem I think now is the Grand Canyon between the skaters, right, and the organised crime, and the fact that there's no real place that the organised crime can look at. Well, where do I go to resource good skate park design? And they will possibly go to the builders
that give the
there is designers
the
out
lowest
there and
price.
stuff like that. Yeah, but like, I guess what I
and councils do that notoriously anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know. But look, you know, it's still you can't complain.
No.
I mean, look at it. I mean, look.
Better to have shit facilities than no facilities.
You're here in front of
right.
us now, and you could say name 5. You know, the 5 skate parks that were around, and you thought it was going somewhere, and now there's like 5 every month in Australia.
I guess what and Lucas has just kind of replied, and I guess I get it kind of because I've only been skating for like 4 years, but and you guys were and you know people that I've spoken to have skated in the 70s 80s skated on cheese graters with terrible transitions and all this kind of stuff, but you still made it work. I guess these days, well, for me as an old skater at 45, but still learning, I go to Brunswick is awesome. The bowl is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's right.
The other part, the street part, I don't even drop in on that little tiny 2 foot because I'll kill myself. It's those kinds of things, and I can't find the flow in it. No. Whereas the young kids the kids that turn up here, Jimmy and all those guys, they love that part. And
don't know any better.
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. They make do with what they've got.
And I think that is probably the most important part here is that, and I think this is probably a key point to skateboarding.
Yes,
is adaptability.
Yeah, you
can do a trick anywhere if you can adapt to what the transition or the facility is. Leanya and Jingili in Darwin, like you look at them and you sort of go, there's from where I come from with my skateboarding, I look at it and I'm sort of like, well, I really want to do an ollie to nose slide. I want to do a frontside grind to, backside 5-0 to this that, and the other on a quarter pole. A mini ramp sort of thing. Don't mind if it's concrete and all the rest of it. Doesn't bother me. Love corners, but that sort of thing isn't built into a lot of facilities now. So just think of it, just hedging onto that. Someone we haven't talked about when we were talking about guys carrying on and running and doing things. Renton, I've sort of semi-reconnected with him back on Facebook and all the rest of it after many years and all the rest of it, but he's been doing some amazing stuff with he's been coming up to Darwin regularly and running comps at Leanya and Jingili along with Ross Burgundy and through Proper at Mayfair and
is it the
and
King
a couple of crew up there. It's a shop up there.
Has he been doing the King of Concrete up there?
Yeah, I don't know if he does King of Concrete, but he's been coming up regularly every year.
Oh, okay.
King of Street, maybe. Yeah,
right.
And running comps at those facilities. So, and it's awesome because it fires up all the kids in there, and you go there and you watch the guys that are skating those places, and they're nailing it. And this is what we're talking about the adaptability of that's all they have. So you find the lines.
This is also a place that doesn't have a skate comp every other week, right?
That's right. Well, you're lucky to get 1 or 2 a year.
You can have three a weekend in Melbourne.
And to give Proper at Mayfair their props, like they hold regular Wednesday night sessions there. They get a lot of the girls from the roller derby coming on roller skates.
Awesome.
They've got all the guys on skateboards, etc. They also allow scooters. We'll just let that sit there and for a second.
Over.
Yeah, but and BMX as well.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is that they're and they have a sausage. They cook up snags and it's more like a
community.
It's like a meet and greet, a community thing. Where we're not having comps and we don't have the numbers and the facility style to do that, but we still come together as a community of skateboarders and we hold regular meets.
It's all a minority, and it's just like bringing it together is like. Let's face it, Darwin probably needs a clubhouse, and
and probably needs a decent bowl, and like a Noble Park.
Yeah,
it needs a Noble Park.
It needs a facility with lights, that's for sure. You can't skate during the day.
Exactly right.
So I have a question for you. What has skating taught you?
Wow, that's a good one. What has skateboarding taught me? Look, funnily enough, maybe the skating didn't teach me as much as the family and the camaraderie and we all lived all together all of those years through the 80s and into the 90s. Everything we did together. We banded together as a crew, as a family, as friends, as like once again, relationships and all of that sort of stuff. It's interesting now being a 51-year-old single parent raising a child who I've had, my son Finn. He and I, it's been him and me for 5 years. He started to see when I reconnected over the last couple of years with everybody, he started to see everything. I started collecting skateboards again, and now we've got boards all over the walls, and I'm in all the skateboarding collecting sites, and he and I skate together. It's amazing to actually be where I am now. Like getting back onto the board 2 or 3 years ago, I was a bit sort of nervous when I first got on, and within 2 hours of riding, I was pulling out tricks that I'd been doing 25 years ago. It blew my son away because he saw pictures and this, that and the other, and then all of a sudden we started going to the skate park because he decided he wanted to start skating. So I built him a board and we went down. Actually, he rode your Yogi's board for the first couple of months or so. And, getting back to that stage of then teaching someone, it changed everything for me all of a sudden. Like skateboarding all of a sudden came back into my life in a flood. The connection that I now have with my son through doing that has been amazing. Not only for him looking at me and going, well, you're not full of shit, you actually can skate, but also just that it created a platform between the two of us, where all of a sudden he'd try and do something and I'd go, oh, how about you just do this? And he'd do it and he'd nail it and come back to you with a beam on his face.
Yeah. That would have been after you got rid of the Yogi's board, right?
Just after. It wasn't that bad of a board. Still doesn't have any flex in it, mate. They were built well.
Yeah, they were built well.
Yeah, but it's funny. I don't know that it was actually if I look back then, skateboarding was definitely a binding thing for me. It probably saved me from a lot of things, while also towards the end leading me into a lot of things. But I think more than the actual skateboarding, it's more about, it's amazing to have, reconnecting with Zach and Maddie and all the rest of that stuff, and it's all, love you, brother. It's the brotherhood has never failed. And it's never diminished, even though we haven't, spoken for a long time. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, brother, love hearing your voice again. That's the thing that I think is the core element of where we're talking about with this. And I hate to use the term sport because I really don't think it is. And without hedging into the whole Olympics thing and all the rest of that sort of stuff.
What size tracksuit are you?
Yeah. These days, large. But I think it's that bond of subculture, that bond of being different, that bond of not quite fitting into society. And that's something hedging back to where we were talking about earlier on, about where I said to you about, and you were saying you knew of us about our domination of Paran.
Right.
Now while we dominated, and we used to roll up and there'd be kids everywhere, we'd roll beers, we'd roll in and we would carve that at 100 mile an hour. We'd roll in a couple of big calves, then someone would do a big lippy, a full, locked Smith grind, someone would do a huge boneless. All of a sudden, the whole joint would clear. Every kid in the joint would go and sit on all the little bloody wooden things around the outside and watch us skate. But if the most useless skater rolled in and went up and did a kick turn, and as he was coming back, we're talking 6-8-year-olds when we were 20 odd.
Yeah.
He'd do a kick turn and come back, and as he's coming across the flat, he'd have a smile across his face, from ear to ear. We would then go, right, he is enjoying skateboarding. So if anybody cut him off or dropped in on him, we'd be like, hey, get the fuck out of the way. Don't you ever go near him again.
Yeah.
Let that little man have his bloody roll. And we'd often clear the bowl, because we'd dominate it, and then we'd clear the bowl. We'd actually stand there and go, hey, everybody, back off.
Yeah.
And we'd go, right, mate, go. Right, mate, go. And let these little guys that have been watching us, then they would then go, we just skated with those powerhouses.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think is the most important. And where we've lost a bit with the scooters and the, there's no etiquette of drop-in anymore. There's no etiquette of snaking. There's no etiquette of letting people have their go and have their turn. You know, like, even though we were that hardcore and we were older, we still had this thing about the Groms are what's important. The Groms, watching their face, like we're doing all of this, and they'd roll in and go and do a kick turn while someone's doing a big carve over the top of them.
Yeah.
That would make them then, 5 years later, we'd be standing there looking at them going, man, look at this fucking kid skate.
Yeah.
Look at him go.
Yep.
That's the stuff that we need to hang on to, and that's the stuff that we need to promote now, especially with scooters and all the rest of it.
This is this is what all the older boys coming back into skateboarding.
It's fantastic.
Like, someone that's had to sell it for a long time, like when, I guess, you know, like I was doing Vision and Deathbox and stuff like that, so I attracted the old blokes, you know.
Yeah.
And then when they started skating, because it all went on walls at the start.
Yeah, that's right.
And then they took it off the wall and started skating and stuff. But like, you could see the positivity, you know, like coming back into the parks, and like it's like a steadying hand, you know, on these young kids' guide, you know, like their journey, you know, like no one's trying to change them or do anything, but like just having that old bloke around saying something, because that wasn't there, you know.
And see, and this is I think this is a really good thing about. And it's interesting because I just saw a video on Facebook before I came here of Ron Allen.
Yeah.
50
ripping.
Ripping is beyond a fucking joke, mate.
Really?
You have a look at this video of him. I'll tag you in it.
Yeah,
You've got to have a look at it.
Yeah.
You would not be able to tell me that that's not a 19-year-old skater.
Really?
He is busting shit, and the flow and the smoothness of the way. And you look at him, it's interesting. If you didn't know he was 57... you would not, that's a 57-year-old guy skating. You'd go, is he like a 27-year-old pro? You know, like, he is just absolutely shredding. And it's interesting, like, you know, like, even my mother was saying the other day, because I was going on 51 and da-da-da, and she's like, fucking shut up. You know, like, you're still fit and you're still... And I think if we went back 20 or 30 years, even 20-odd years, a 57-year-old skater wouldn't have been what Alan's doing.
No way. Like,
no way, no.
Like generally skating street, you get to a point, you know, job, girlfriend, car, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
When you come back to skateboarding, it's
and
like,
he is just shredding and smooth. The good thing about all of these guys, and look, don't get me wrong too, like guys that are our age that maybe shouldn't skate, you know, like, you know, you see a lot of guys where, you know, especially on some of the sites that I'm on, you know, with the collecting and stuff, they often put stuff up and, you know, 3 times during the year they've done an elbow, done a knee.
I've seen some of those photos.
You know, like, there's some of us that maybe shouldn't sort of be doing it. But the majority of the guys that skated well and hard back then can sort of still, even if they've been out of it for 10 or 20 years, can get back into it and start to get, you know, a lot of the basic tricks and have some flow and do things, you know. So, but the best thing about all of this is having these older guys like your Sacks and guys like that who are hitting places like this. They have the memory of what we were just talking about then, about Stoke and the younger crew and all of that. They have that old school camaraderie, you know, like, it's not necessarily about me. It's about, if that young fella goes, I've had it a couple of times in Catherine, you know, one of the first 3 or 4 times I went there and skated, a couple of young Indigenous boys, and I'm talking, you know, like, you know, 8, 9, 10 years old. You know, I rolled up and I've got my board and they're all sort of looking at me like, oh, here we go, like, roll in, frontside grind, frontside boneless, you know, backside layback, da-da-da-da, and all of a sudden I've come up to where they're all rolling in from, and they've all looked at me, and the first question was, how old are you, mate? And I've gone, 48. And they've gone, what? And then all of a sudden they've just started going, oh, and they start off and do what they do, and then you get the chance to then go, yeah, mate, go. Next time you do that, put your arm back here and put this one up here. Yeah. You know, like, and you do it, and they come back and go, oh, yeah. That's what we need again. We need that. We need that promotion of the side of the sport. You know, like, I'm going to get myself into a shitload of trouble here, and I can about 5 or 10 or 15 different fucking sites on Facebook and all the rest of it.
Are you ready for the beeps?
But seriously, 50-year-old men going, you! I've got to say, like, please find
Fucking-
another
I'm not-
fucking term.
I'm not beeping that shit.
Find another term, please. 50-year-old men going, you. We need to find something else. Go rad or go grouse or something. Find something else. But
Yeah.
you know, like that's a, you know, like it's a fucking teenager call. It really is. Anyway, like I said, I'm getting myself in a lot of shit for that.
The thing that we
I don't
have
think
trouble
so.
with at the skate park is all the young ones, and you do the whole yo, that's cool, yeah, excellent. Then when we all go to leave, we're all like, no, we
Yeah.
just shake hands. But then we're all going, oh, that's embarrassing. Just don't.
It's a classic white chicks with gang signs.
yeah.
That's right.
All right. What else have we got?
So I'd like to finish off by kind of
You hedged on to a couple of things that I've skirted too, haven't you?
yeah,
Like,
just I'd like to know about
my fall from grace, or
No, have you killed a crocodile?
oh Jesus.
no? Well, we're not allowed to shoot crocodile territory because they're protected.
Could have run over one by accident.
Yeah, no, we.
Run over
You know,
one.
the
Just
only,
take your car
the only
out.
situation where you're actually allowed to protect yourself from one is if they're actually attacking you. So,
there you go.
no, I haven't.
No, I wouldn't put myself in that position either.
Shot plenty of buffalo, hunted plenty of pigs, all sorts of other things because I'm a Territorian now and all the rest of it. Caught plenty of barra,
Yeah.
but
Keep the taipan in your thongs.
oh, that one of the best videos I've seen in a long time. Old mate was a legend. Have you seen that video? Old bloke, it was an RSL or something somewhere in either southern Queensland or whatever. And the snake comes up to him and he goes to kick the bloody thing and it tries to have a go at him and he kicks it again and starts to piss off and he walks towards the bar. The old mate's about 80 years old, you know. Like,
So good, man.
it's a classic. Yeah. So no, look,
Someone dig that up and put it on the-
plenty of snakes up there, pythons, and we got king browns and western browns and all the rest of it. So wrangled plenty of snakes. Snakes don't bother me. Like we actually protect them off the roads and stuff like that if we're driving out on the highways during the night and stuff. And they often go out on the road to get the heat from the road, latent from especially during dry season. So we usually try and pull up and then we grab them by the tail and get them to move off the road and so they don't get killed, etc. But anyway, that's going into a whole different. That's a whole different podcast or video.
Everyone was thinking it, Shane.
My crocodile D done.
That's right.
Stuff.
That's right. So yeah, your fall from grace and how you came back from that.
Yeah, look, you know, like this is one that's sort of like a, you know, like I guess probably the best way to sort of start talking about this and sort of putting this is, you know, like drugs ended up taking over a major portion of my life towards the late 90s. While I'd still been skating and stuff like that through that, you know, I struggled a lot with certain aspects of my life and all the rest of it. So I did a bit of a downfall, a bit like what's old mate, the American guy that's been on the what's that television program? He's got a few teeth missing and he's what's the show?
Skater?
Yeah.
Like Bam or
No. Well, Bam was more alcohol and stuff like. Little bloke, real weedy little bloke. He's been on that show that.
Andy Roy.
DC.
Andy Roy, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went down some pathways that were probably, you know, like pretty hardcore and all the rest of that sort of thing, and you know, did rehab and cleaned up, and 19 years clean now. I guess the biggest thing that I can sort of say with all of this is, you know, people choose pathways and you make wrong decisions, and sometimes things lead you down ways where you can't see the light, and all the rest of it. I guess we talked about this outside of the video and microphones and all the rest of it. I'm now a 50 man raising a boy, 8 years old, turning 9 in January. He's been with me full time for 5 years. As I said, 19 years clean. Doesn't matter how far you go downwards, there's always up. And you can't define yourself by the things that you do in life, by the mistakes you make, and carry them hard. The mistakes you make in life make you who you are when you move past them. I think it's important for a lot of people to know that no matter how dark it gets, there's always an out that isn't negative. I've lost a lot of friends over the years through overdoses, through suicides, through car accidents, through all sorts of different types of ways. I've seen some of the darker sides of life and came out the other side. support is obviously one of the biggest things that's a key in this. If you're lucky enough to have family, etc., around you, and be able to move out the other side, it's awesome that you can have that support. But there's a lot of people that don't have that.
Yeah,
I think it's important that people that don't have that know that there is actually that support. People like Benjamin Topperwein, who's with OMSR, Old Man Skateboarders. Skateboard riders. He does a lot of funding and raises a lot of money for Beyond Blue, Black Dog Foundation, I wouldn't be the man I am now if I hadn't gone through the shit that I did. Now, there's a lot of people that didn't get to see or come through the shit that they were in when they were there. But in this day and age, all it takes is to reach out and go, I'm not doing well. Or for the people that are around the people that are not doing well, all you have to do is say, are you okay? And I'm not going to get into all the catch cry shit about are you okay and all the rest of it, because that's not where I'm coming from. I think it's important that a lot of crew know that your trials and your tribulations end up making you who you are. And as I said just before, I wouldn't be the man I am now if it wasn't for the shit that I'd actually gone through in my past. And maybe I'm lucky, maybe I'm fortunate, whether it was through the support I had or whether it was through my own fortitude or my own strength, that I managed to move out of that stuff and become who I am today. But yeah, look, it was I definitely delved into the darker side of life for quite a while. And I came out the other side and now I am who I am.
Did you move around? Did you go leave Melbourne and end up in Katherine? Or
I only left Melbourne after I'd cleaned up and cleaned my life up and sort of got back to a straight and narrow. But I could still see, it was around 39 or so, where I could still see that Melbourne was killing me, and that if I continued to stay here, the same cycle potentially could occur, even though by 39 I'd been, 8 or 9 years clean. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I got to that point where I sort of decided, no, I need to get the hell out of Dodge, so, sure. And that's why I ended up in Katherine. I was lucky enough to, get scouted by a mob, because I was a barista for many years and got quite good at it, and had a bit of a reputation around the Fitzroy and Brunswick area as a barista and just knew I was at that point where I needed to find something different and find something better in my life, and applied for a job in the Northern Territory at Nitmiluk Gorge with Nitmiluk Tours, and they said, yep, you're exactly what we need, and paid for me to move my vehicle and all myself and my belongings and everything up to there, and I've been there for 11 years, and it was definitely a good change point. Like, it completely different to anything I'd ever experienced before, and by pure chance, it was also what was actually in me for many, many years, and I just hadn't recognised it. So, it definitely changed me, and obviously 2 or 3 years into moving up to the Territory, my son was born, and unfortunately relationship failed, etc. But made the best of it as I could, and made sure I held on to my son in regards to access and all that sort of thing. And then, like I said, 5 years ago, he sort of came to me full time, and it's been the best thing that I ever did in my life. Being a parent and being a father has changed me again and turned me into things. So I guess probably a good way to sort of get into this segue is a couple of those terms that I was actually saying to you guys before about if it wasn't for what happened in my past, I wouldn't be the man I am today.
Yeah.
It's good to look back in the mirror and sort of recognise your mistakes, etc., and understand how they forged you into who you are. A big catch cry that I use these days, as I said to you boys before, is the rear vision mirror in a car is as small as it is, so that when you're looking back you can only see a little bit of it. The windscreen is as big as it is, so that you can always look forward and you can see the bigger picture as you move forward. It's, for me, the reconnection with all of the skate fraternity and all of the crew that were so important to me 20 odd years ago, 25 years ago. The reconnection with them has just been amazing. To to speak to crew that I lived my life with day in, day out after 25 years has been another one of those amazing revelations and push-ons in life where
Absolutely.
I start to understand better about myself. You know, like I'm finally starting to become the man that I should have been back then. To be able to sort of give back this sort of stuff and to talk about where we've come from as skateboarders and as a community. I'm humbled and honoured that you guys have asked me to come here and do this, and it's amazing to be viewed at by a lot of guys, that the way they speak to me and that they view me from what we did back then. And in saying that, I'm amazed and inspired by a lot of the guys from who I'm looking at what they are doing now and who they are now drives me even harder to be better than what I am every day. So the skateboarding community and the fraternity and the camaraderie that is in skateboarding is an amazing fucking thing. And it's awesome to see all of the 40, 50 odd year old guys really working hard to carry this shit on and to still be involved. And look, guys like Sack, like Simon Reynolds is an absolute fucking inspiration no matter which way you fucking look at it, you know. 53 years old, punching out inverts and grinds on the biggest ramps that we have in Australia and the bowls we have in Australia. But that go-get attitude and that fucking, there is nothing that is too hard. The drive. Oh, he is an energizer battery. Like, he puts 15-year-olds to fucking shame with his energy, you know, like, and I don't want to just confine it just to Sack, because there's, you know, like, we've lost a lot of guys this year, you know, like, who are absolute living legends, you know, and aren't as well known as a lot of guys. They are in the scene, but in the outward part of the scene, you know, guys don't know who, you know, Tomo was. Guys don't know who, oh, look, you know, there's so many guys we can talk about that we've lost this year, you know, like, I think it's an amazing fucking sport. It carried on from where surfing was for many, many years, with the camaraderie and that you could skate until you were surf until you were 70. You know, like seeing guys at 50 and 55 and 57 skating like machines. You know, like, and it doesn't matter if all you're doing is frontside grind to frontside grind to frontside grind to frontside grind. It does not fucking matter. You know, like, you're out there, you're doing it, you have the energy.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't matter.
Pump on.
Carving that Brunswick pole and staying under the coping. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just to see people doing it. It's just awesome. Fired me on. And it's awesome because the firing on that I got from this, from the reconnection, has already spilled over to my son. You know, like, the more we do this and the more we continue to consolidate the brotherhood, the better off we are. You know, like, well, that's right. You know,
a lot of my difficulties in life were my own choices too. This is something that I think is important for a lot of people to realise. You need to own your shit. You need to internalise your locus of control. You can't externalise it. If you keep standing there and saying, oh, it was because of them, or it was because of that, or it was because of this, or because of that, you're going to continue to make mistakes and all the rest of it. As soon as you can go, I can change this. I'm the one that did this. Then you move forward. Whether we're talking about, you know, addiction problems, whether we're talking about family problems, whether we're talking about not skating, you know, like da-da-da-da. If you own it, you can change it. So that's the biggest thing I've learned over my last 10 years.
Well, I'm not going to say much more because I just think that was incredible. I'm going to just thank you so much for coming.
Well, I've got to thank you guys. Like, seriously, I was nervous as fuck coming into this.
Well, the power outage saved us, mate.
Yeah, the power outage, it made me got me 3 more beers under me, so you actually got an honest interview out of me, you know. So
what, 3 more beers? We've got a Darwin stubby in here. That's it.
Yeah. Look, I've got to say, like, bringing Bort back into the fold the way I have been, you know, people like Frank Somerville changed a lot of things for a lot of us, and he's still he wasn't like a father figure to us, but he was. And even today, I sort of rate him as an inspiration to a lot of us. And I'm sure Simon and a lot of the guys at Road for Motion, Matty Davis and all of those guys would say the same thing. you know, I could shout out for probably another half an hour.
Oh, look.
But, you know, there's so many guys. I think it's important to understand too that I couldn't have done a lot of the things I did back then. I couldn't have done a lot of the things I did back then if I hadn't have had all those crew around me.
Yeah.
If I hadn't have had the Bogdans and the Simons and the, you know, all of those guys around me, I wouldn't have been able to have risen to the occasion and driven skateboarding the way I did in the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't see it a lot of the way that a lot of you guys see it, you know, like, and you know, Sack saying that, you know, a lot of people in skateboarding today need to sort of, you know, appreciate me and understand that, you know, it was because of me that a lot of things unfolded. It's an amazing and beautiful thing to say. It humbles me in, you know, in massive ways. If it hadn't have been me, it might have been someone else. You know what I mean? Like, I was maybe lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
I guess. I mean, see, I didn't know any of this stuff, so, you know, but...
and there's a lot of stuff we haven't touched on tonight.
Oh, of course. You know, and there's going to be probably a part 2 and a part 3.
Send the questions for Shane through to Facebook, please.
You know, we've got to mention the Samet boys here too, just quickly.
Yes.
Because
they're up on Sunday.
Yeah, they're up on Sunday. You know, like, and I'm like Lucas. I'm a big believer that Mother Samet should be here too to finally settle the debate between Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Did you hear that, Lucas?
Who is the preferred son? Who has the best pop? Grant swears to me that he knows the answer already, and it's all sorted. So, but those guys were amazing guys back then as well. You know, like
out of style.
we might have to have a pop off if that's the thing.
Can we get one of those little worm things for this Samet thing?
Yeah.
So that people at home have a worm and they can vote.
Yeah.
Like a 60 Minutes debate.
Sure. You've just made more work for me.
One last thing I'm going to throw in here too is, well, we were just talking just before about you know, the fall from grace and this, that, and the other, and da-da-da-da. There are a large amount of guys from that time who struggled with a lot of demons for many years, and they're still here, and they're still doing their shit.
Yeah.
So my call out is probably to say power on to everybody that did what they did and got out of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And are doing awesome things now.
Yeah.
You know, like,
True.
I'm not the only one. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination the most spectacular one, or have done it the right way. But yeah, awesome to be here. Thank you very much. It's been really nice.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
We just need a recommendation for the next one.
Oh, a potential nomination.
Ooh, potential nomination. Well, you know what? He's been through an amazing amount of shit this year. He's dealt with shit in a way that I wouldn't have actually dealt with it. That I wouldn't have even begun to be able to deal with the things that he's actually dealt with, especially as a father. To have the grace and humility and understanding that he does, because he's a much better man than I. I'm a judgmental old cunt. I reckon Matty Davis.
Matty Davis?
Matty Davis was instrumental in a lot of the Canberra scene and all the rest of it, including into New South Wales, with Bondi and Sydney and all the rest of it. He spent many, many years with us in Melbourne. He was an awesome fucking skater in his early days. In your early days, Matty, he's done some amazing stuff and he's been there all through our life. Old Turtle's been involved with all of the people that I've talked about through all the years. Really love to hear his side on things. I think he'd be a really good one.
Awesome. All right, so we've just got to get hold of Matty Davis if anyone can put him in contact with us.
Chuck him on a greyhound, Sacker.
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome. Well,
gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much to Shane George and to Penguin
Thank
for
you very
being
much
on the set.
for backing me up too tonight, because I was nervous about being on my own. So
No, that's
Good,
good.
buddy.
Well, hey, I was nervous about being on my own.
I can shat myself in the bed.
All right, so thanks a lot to everyone. We're going to close it off now, and we will come back on Sunday when we've got the Zammit brothers in the studio.
Oh, and if I don't do it, love you, Finning.
Find us
Told
a
you I'd
beer
mention
sponsor,
you.
for God's sake.
Yeah, find us a sponsor. I don't know, subscribe on Instagram. No,
Beer sponsor.
YouTube.
Yeah, beer
sponsor. It'd be great to have some more funds to actually be able to do more stuff. So, woo! All right, awesome.
Cheers, gang.
You.
Thank you. Yeah, fucking oath.
That was awesome. Oh, Lucas is watching it, just going, "This is the best one ever." And oh my god, how articulate! Oh my god! And then when you went into the heavy,
articulate.
when he went into the heavy stuff, he's like, "This is really heavy and gritty, and this is awesome." And oh my god, yeah, he can't-
Fantastic. Cheers, guys.
That's all right.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mate,
Yeah,
we're
and-
just like, seriously.
More than happy to do a backup, and if you want to get me in with another person and and have a bounce off, Sack would be awesome.
Well,
but-
there we go. So Lucas has just said, "Great job, Shane and the boys. Respect." Oh, she will. I know the answers. That's to the Zammit brothers and the mum. And then he's saying, "Pop off, pop off."
Yes.
Does Shane have nominate? Yes. And then he goes, Matty Davis, good call. Off to Adelaide we go.
Awesome.
I'm like, right. Someone just try and find us some funding, and we're off.
Yep.
And yeah, Hefty said Andy Roy. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Hefty.
Andy Roy.
Yeah.
The spider web on his
Yeah,
head.
yeah.
I'm like, fuck.
Look, it's been. What's the name of that bloody show that I was trying to think
King
of?
of the Road.
King of the Road. No, the other one. The one that.
Well, he's no King of the Road.
Yeah,
It's
but
actually King of
the
Road.
other one that he did with. Oh, mate, went to all these different abandoned.
Oh no, that's Rick McCrank.
Yeah, what's that show?
Abandoned.
Yeah,
Yeah, Bandit.
he actually did a show with
Oh,
Andy
with Rick-
Roy,
yeah,
and Andy
yeah,
was
yeah.
talking about all of his drug addiction
yeah,
and.
yeah, he did it with and Frank Gerwer was there as well.
Yeah.
And they went to Slalom.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
Slalom
yeah.
comp and shit.